East Boston, popularly known as East E, is a neighborhood of Boston, Massachusetts with approximately 40,000 residents. The neighborhood was created by connecting several islands using landfill. It was annexed by Boston in 1836. It is separated from the city proper by Boston Harbor and bordered by Winthrop, Revere, and the Chelsea Creek. Directly west of East Boston, across Boston Harbor, is the North End and Boston's financial district. East Boston has long provided a foothold for the latest immigrants, with Irish, Russian Jews and then Italians alternating as the predominant group. From the 1990s into the early millennium, Latin American immigrants settled in East Boston. In recent years, East Boston has become home to a wave of young professionals seeking residence in Boston in newly renovated condominiums along Jeffreys Point, Maverick Square, and the Eagle Hill waterfront. Jeffreys Point specifically has become one of the most desirable neighborhoods, due to its location to the harbor, marinas, and Piers Park. The Kennedy family resided in East Boston. The neighborhood is easily accessible to downtown Boston via the MBTA Blue Line. Originally, 5 islands made up the East Boston neighborhood. To connect to the mainland, routes, highways, and bridges had to be built. Some popular structures built to bridge that gap between the islands and the mainland include the Tobin Bridge, the Sumner Tunnel and the Callahan Tunnel. The Logan Airport is located in East Boston, connecting to international locations. History. Early history. The landmass that is East Boston today was originally made up of 5 islands, Noddles, Hogs, Governors, Bird, and Apple, that were connected using landfill, the latter 3 as part of the expansion of Logan Airport during World War II. Not long after the settling of Boston, Noddle Island served as grazing land for cattle. In 1801, William H. Sumner had proposed to the federal government of the United States to create a turnpike to connect Salem to Boston via the undeveloped Noddles Island. He argued that the route over it would be more direct, making it easier for the neighborhood to develop. He stated, "In my opinion, that the circular route from Chelsea through Charlestown to Boston is about 1/2 mile farther than a direct course over Noddles Island in Boston. The course suggested will be almost in a direct line. From my knowledge of the land, on the back part of the island is a muddy creek and the distance of the island to Boston is not so great by 1/3. I presume as it is from Chelsea to Morton Point in Charlestown. There is no doubt that the necessities of the town of Boston will soon require a connection with Noddles Island with the town of which it is part. The one issue that Sumner foresaw, but glossed over, was that land in Charlestown was purchased by the federal government as the site for a future naval yard. The ships en route from this yard to the ocean would be blocked by the proposed turnpike. He believed that since a standing navy was in such disfavor at that point in the nation's history that this issue would not stand in his way. However, the War of 1812, which was considered a naval war, changed the public's opinion about the needs for a naval yard. Because the route through East Boston and over the Boston Harbor would block ships' routes to the future Charlestown Navy Yard, the turnpike was planned to go through Chelsea as opposed to Noddles Island. Formation of East Boston Company. Sumner began to make his move for the acquisition of all of Noddles Island upon the death of Colonel David Stoddard Greeniff, who had been a long-time holdout against selling to him. Greeniff died of apoplexy, and his wife and children wanted to cede their portion of the island. In 1836, Sumner coincidentally married Greeniff's widow, Maria Foster Doane. With the assistance of his new business partners, Stephen White and Francis J. Oliver, he purchased the land for $100 per acre or $32,500. This purchase gave Sumner control of 1/2 of the island. Subsequently, in February 1832, the partners formed the East Boston Company. They stated that their part of the island was to be divided into 666 shares and that it would be managed by a board of directors, who would be able to sell the company's interest in the island. Establishing transportation to the area was imperative, and they were dedicated to pushing for a railroad connection from Boston to Salem over the island. They also wanted to establish a ferry system from Boston. Each share of the company was equivalent to 0.5 acre. There were 5,280 acres in total, of which Sumner owned 1,320, Mrs. Gerard 880, Stephen White 880, and Oliver 440. The rest were spread among 29 other shareholders. By the end of 1833, the East Boston Company had complete control over the entire island. Connections to the mainland in the 1830s. The largest problem keeping East Boston from thriving was transportation. The East Boston Company believed the neighborhood could not become a valuable asset until people had a way to reach the area from the Boston mainland. As a temporary solution, they set up a paddle steamer to carry 15 people at a time from Boston proper to the neighborhood. It was used primarily for occasional visits from public officials and laborers. Though they did not have the ridership to support additional boats, the company purchased the Tom Thumb steamboat. The steam railroad system was still in its infancy at this point, and the East Boston Company was approached by an inventor of a new type of rail system, the suspension railway. This system was one of the earliest suspended railroads to be built. The railroad cars were propelled by a steam engine hanging from a suspended track. Henry Sargent, the inventor, stated that his invention would make the island a center of attraction to many people. The company allowed it to be built on its land, and it was in use for 9 days in 1834, then closed citing lack of ridership. In the mid-1830s, the company made several investments to further East Boston's desirability. They continued attempts to get the Eastern Railroad to come to East Boston. The Maverick and East Boston ferries began service from Lewis Wharf on the mainland to East Boston. A bridge to Chelsea was built, roads were laid out, and houses were built. Much of this activity was spurred by the formation of the East Boston Lumber Company. During this period, the Boston Sugar Refinery was also founded, which was the first manufacturing establishment in East Boston. They are credited for the creation of white granulated sugar. Kennedy family. President Kennedy addressing the people of New Ross Island, June 1963. When my great-grandfather left here to become a cooper in East Boston, he carried nothing with him except two things: a strong religious faith and a strong desire for liberty. I am glad to say that all of his great-grandchildren have valued that inheritance. The Kennedy family lived on Meridian Street in what is now a small home wedged between a Hispanic market and hardware store approaching the Meridian Street branch of the Boston Public Library. The family later moved to a larger home on Monmouth Street. P.J. Kennedy's success enabled him to purchase a home for his son, Joseph, and another for his two daughters at Jeffreys Point. In 1954, John F. Kennedy famously paraded through East Boston with his wife, Jackie, in anticipation for his campaign to run for President of the United States to secure votes from the neighborhood. In a famous photograph, Kennedy is shown walking down Chelsea Street heading towards Maverick Square, waving to the crowd in front of Santa Pio's Pizza. He went on to win the election and became the 35th President of the United States. On numerous occasions, Senator Ted Kennedy mentioned that his family's roots are embedded in East Boston throughout his career in the United States Senate. Later history. Since the mid-19th century, the community has served as a foothold for immigrants to America. Irish and Canadians came first, followed by Russian Jews and Italians, then Southeast Asians, and, most recently, large influx from Central and South American countries. The Orient Heights section of East Boston was the first area in Massachusetts to which Italians immigrated in the 1860s and 1870s. and remains today the heart of the Italian community in East Boston. The population of East Boston, which was recorded as a mere 1,000 in 1837, exploded to a high of just over 64,000, according to the 1925 census. The sudden rise is attributed to the immigrants who came from southern Italy. Today, the neighborhood is home to over 40,000 inhabitants with a median income per household of around $46,000. Transportation. Transportation has long played a role in the shaping of East Boston. The world's finest clipper ships were built at the shipyard owned by Donald Mackay in the mid-19th century. A subway tunnel connecting the neighborhood to the rest of the city opened in 1904 and was the first undersea tunnel of its kind in the United States. Rows of houses were torn down to build the Sumner and Callahan tunnels, directly connecting automobile traffic from downtown Boston. An airfield was built in the early 1920s, which eventually expanded to become Logan International Airport. The eastern terminus of Interstate 90 has been at Route 1A next to Logan Airport since 2003, and the newer Ted Williams Tunnel links I-90 from East Boston to the rest of the city. For many years, East Boston's connections to Boston, which included the Sumner and Callahan tunnels, including the Tobin Bridge by way of Chelsea, were overcrowded. The constant flow of traffic of those who wish to reach the airport would have to approach one of these passageways, causing traffic jams. The building of the Ted Williams Tunnel has since alleviated much of this traffic problem. The City of Boston has also supplied residents with special transponders, known as Fast Lane, that allows them to automatically pay reduced tolls through the Sumner and Ted Williams tunnels. Logan Airport, New England's primary international airport and 48th busiest in the world, resides mainly in East Boston. It is almost completely surrounded by water. There has been continual controversy surrounding Logan, as constant conflict with the Massachusetts Port Authority has been a source of bitterness among some local residents since its inception. The expansion of Logan Airport in the late 1960s and early 1970s displaced families along Neptune Road, which is now used for warehouses and rental car property. The airport has since implemented 4 airport edge buffers, which include parks and greenery to appease residents. The MBTA's Blue Line stops in East Boston include Maverick Airport, Wood Island, Orient Heights, and Suffolk Downs. Massport provides free shuttle buses from the airport MBTA station to all Logan Airport terminals and the rental car center. The East Boston Greenway, a shared-use path and park along a former rail line, connects to the airport station. Demographics. East Boston's population is ethnically diverse, reflecting the immigrants from around the world who moved into it. In the early 1900s, immigrants have been a part of the East Boston community. First the Irish and Canadians, then came Russian Jews and Italians, Southeast Asians, and finally Latinos. As of 2010, East Boston is 60% Hispanic, 18% white, 14% black, 5% Asian, and 3% other. East Boston has a very diverse Hispanic community. Unlike other Hispanic communities in the city, which on average are almost exclusively Puerto Rican or Dominican, East Boston's Latino community is mostly composed of immigrants from Central and South America. Immigrants have come from Brazil, Colombia, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras and Peru. Helpful sources can be found from the East Boston Immigration Station. Until the immigration of Spanish speakers, East Boston had an Italian-American majority. In terms of gender, more males live in East Boston than females. The dominant ethnicity in East Boston is Latino at 54.4% of the population. The white population is 35.5%, Asian 4.4%, and black or African American population 2.9%. According to the East Boston 2010 census, a definite increase among the Latino population from 2000 to 2010 occurred. Research has shown on specific data of Puerto Rican and Dominican ethnicity in the American Community Survey from 2005 to 2009 estimate data collected for East Boston, with El Salvador being at the top of the list as 26.6% foreign-born population. Dominican Republic foreign-born have 3.8%, while Puerto Rico did not make the top 20 list of countries. Other countries that made the top 20 list of foreign-born that are not Latino include Morocco, Vietnam, China, Cape Verde, Poland, Haiti, Canada, and Malaysia. Urban policies. The Boston Redevelopment Authority for East Boston displays upcoming projects in terms of buildings for housing, and/or parks and recreations. This allows residents of East Boston to be aware of what new housing developments taking place and the location. It also informs them of other recreations, for instance what the future of Suffolk Downs will be. In a fashion bra displays the plans in motion or plans being reviewed, plans being approved, leading up to the construction beginning as well as the progress of the development. This gives residents the awareness of the all changes to come in their neighborhood. In terms of policies on zoning, Boston Redevelopment Authority has presented the zoning laws for the cities of Boston in 3 volumes. To get specific information on East Boston zoning, review the Zoning Commission on Boston Redevelopment Authority. Again, according to the Boston Redevelopment Authority, it shows that residents are welcome to include input on developments within the community. Boston Redevelopment Authority requests residents to access information on urban design, developing projects, planning initiatives, what specific land it is owned by the Boston Redevelopment Authority, and capital construction in East Boston. Residents can access all this information in many different ways. Through the site Boston Redevelopment Authority and/or attending meetings held at Jeffrey's Yacht Club in East Boston. Sites of interest. Belle Isle Marsh Reservation, the largest remaining salt marsh in Boston. The 350-acre Belle Isle Marsh Reservation lies in East Boston. The marsh also borders the towns of Revere and Winthrop. It was once a Metropolitan District Commission reservation, but it is now run by the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. It is a reserve for a variety of flora and fauna. Community Gardens. East Boston is home to 6 community gardens, managed by various organizations such as the Boston Parks and Recreation Department and the Boston Natural Areas Network. Participating gardeners at some of the gardens are assigned small plots which they may plant as they like, in exchange for a nominal annual dues payment. Other gardens, such as the Nuestro Jardín garden across from the Humana School, was formerly reserved for use by school children, but is now maintained by a community-based youth program. Constitution Beach, located in East Boston, is one of Boston's more popular public beaches. Constitution Beach, located in the Orient Heights section of the community. It is known to locals as Shays Beach. The beach underwent renovations in the late 1990s as a new public bathhouse and refreshment stand was added, as well as a new pedestrian walkway over the tracks of the Blue Line onto Bennington Street. Donorion Shrine. One of the most recognizable landmarks of East Boston is the 35-foot-high statue of the Madonna. The Madonna Shrine, atop Orient Heights, is the national headquarters for the Donorion Order. Constructed in 1954, the statue is a full-size replica of the original statue at the Donorion Center in the Monte Mario district of Rome, Italy. It was designed by Jewish-Italian sculptor Arrigo Minerbi, who wanted to show his gratitude to the Catholic Church for having shielded him and his family from the Nazis during World War II. Across the street from the shrine is the Donorion Home, a nursing home founded by the Donorion priests. Historic Places. East Boston has 8 places on the National Register of Historic Places. Baker Congregational Church, Bennington Street Burying Ground, Eagle Hill Historic District, Barnes School, Donald McKay House, United States Lightship Nantucket, Temple Or Shalom Cemetery, Trinity Neighborhood House, Piers Park. Piers Park is located on the west side of East Boston overlooking Boston Harbor and downtown Boston. Designed by Pressley Associates Landscape Architects of Cambridge, the 6.5-acre park was conceived to reclaim a former pier to allow the neighborhood direct access to its waterfront. The park consists of multiple trails paved in brick and granite from the pier's original 1870 sea walls, native salt-tolerant New England plants, more than 32 tree varieties, seasonal flowers, ornamental shrubs, and a 600-foot meandering brick pedestrian promenade with 4 smaller shade pavilions. One of the pavilions is dedicated to Donald McKay. The park also has an amphitheater and a community boating program. Piers Park Sailing Center. Santapio's Pizza. Santapio's Pizza is a well-known restaurant in the neighborhood. Established in 1903 as a bakery, Frank Santapio began selling pizza 3 decades later. A landmark to locals and a destination for visitors, the eatery is primarily known for its New York-style pizza, which it has served at its Chelsea Street location since 1933. Suffolk Downs. Suffolk Downs, opened in 1935, is a thoroughbred racetrack located in East Boston. For years, they have held a Grade II race event at the track called the Mascap. Because of declining revenues as a result of growing Indian casinos in Rhode Island and Connecticut, Suffolk Downs cancelled the 2009 Mascap. On August 18, 1966, the Beatles played a concert before approximately 24,000 people in the infield of the racetrack. Government and business. East Boston is the headquarters for District A7 of the Boston Police Department. The Boston Fire Department has 3 fire stations in East Boston, Ladder 2 and Engine 9 in Maverick Square, Engine 5 in Day Square, and Ladder 21 and Engine 56 in Orient Heights. The United States Postal Service operates a branch in East Boston at 50 Meridian Street. The Logan Office Center, which contains the headquarters of the Massachusetts Port Authority, is adjacent to Logan Airport. Prior to its dissolution, Air New England was headquartered on the grounds of Logan International Airport.